God bless America. Hello, everybody. I am the Talk Radio Protege. This is the Protege program. Keep your eyes up for a bonus video coming today. It's everything you need to know about the Russians who were indicted by the special prosecutor today. Very exciting stuff. But the bulk of my time today I want to spend on talking more about the shooting. And I want to do this because it's still being talked about. It was pushed off of most networks' headlines by the Russia indictments. But, like I said, Jimmy Kimmel and others spent a lot of time last night talking about this issue, and so I want to rebut some of it. Now, I got to hear the clip from Jimmy Kimmel's monologue that explains his point of view on the gun control stuff. And from what I can tell, and I don't even think that I heard the whole monologue, but it doesn't sound like his understanding of the gun debate has expanded at all. So if you'll search Talk Radio Protege Jimmy Kimmel, you'll see two videos that I did on Jimmy Kimmel and his ignorance of the gun issue back during the time of the Las Vegas shooting. Just go watch those. There's no reason for me to reinvent the wheel. And it's just 35 minutes of stuff, in case you've missed it. Now, the real story from today is networks pushing still this lie that Trump made it easier for the mentally ill to buy guns. It's something that Jimmy Kimmel talked about last night. It's something that Stephen Miller predicted was going to be the big talking point yesterday. I showed you Stephen Miller's tweet. I showed you where the media was beginning to trot out the lie that the Trump administration had made it easier for the mentally ill to get guns. And what really was the point of the legislation that Trump repealed, or the executive order that Trump repealed, rather, is that it said that the determining factor on who is mentally defective is whether or not they need assistance in managing their finances. And there were several organizations that are typically left-wing that were opposed to that measure. The way that I've heard it talked about so far today, I'm a little bit confused, but what I think is being said is that groups like the ACLU were opposed to the Obama measure, which defined the mentally defective as those who need assistance in managing their finances. Now, the calls in recent days have been for gun control, and that's it. When I say the call is for gun control, it's literally people are saying, do gun control, do gun control, do gun control. And they're not saying any specifics. Nothing specific is being laid out. Nobody's calling for it. We need to increase this. We need to improve this. We need to add to that. Joe Scarborough threw up all these numbers, and it's nebulous stuff. You know, everybody's in favor of background checks, stronger background checks. That's the thing, stronger background checks. The problem is there's not a lot that you can add to the current instant background check that would make it much stronger. The background checks already check for, as I talked about yesterday, felony convictions, violent, I can't remember everything off the top of my head, but it checks for a list of things, including if you've been forced into a mental health facility. Because if you've been forced into a mental health facility, you might be mentally unstable. And gun store owners aren't going to sell you a gun if you've been forced into a mental health facility. And I'm here to tell you that gun control, the kind of gun control that people are screaming for, whether they know it or not, when people scream gun control, the left takes it to mean one specific thing. And that thing has been tried and is still the law of the land in some places and it is not working. It's not working. Now, there so far is not a clear correlation between harsher gun control laws and more gun crime. From what I could see just in a quick cursory Google search, there's not a lot of evidence that links harsh gun control restrictions to high levels of all kinds of crime. Just thinking about it, thinking about the places that have the most crime, you might say Chicago, Detroit, Boston. You might say Baltimore. You might say New York. You might say D.C. And those places have very strict gun control laws, but there's no hard, fast evidence that points to that. There is a clear correlation, or I should say a clear negative correlation between gun ownership and violent crime. Now, a negative correlation means that as the first thing increases, the second thing decreases. So, for instance, there's a negative correlation between the temperature and people freezing to death. The higher the temperature goes, the fewer people freeze to death. By the same token, there's a negative correlation between gun ownership and violent crime. The higher gun ownership goes, the lower violent crime goes, and they've been moving this way for the past several years. Not to say that more guns causes there to be less violent crime, it's a correlation. And so, with that in mind, I would like to propose a solution to the shootings in schools problem. My solutions are thusly. First, we should add incognito and or uniformed security personnel to school campuses. Minimum 2 personnel who will patrol campus in separate patrols, and they must be armed just as well as potential assailants. If you'll recall, I talked in yesterday's video about the need to wield power. The power with which I am going to threaten your life. In order for you to protect your life from me, you must wield at least as much power as I'm wielding. So we must enable security personnel to wield as much power as a potential assailant would wield. The second solution possible. Enable trained and vetted faculty to concealed carry firearms. Implement crisis management training for all staff. With the right teacher and with the right kind of crisis management training, staff, students, teachers can be empowered to take action to defend themselves. Now, my wife is a teacher's aide in a classroom, and she recently had to take a crisis management training course, and she said it was exciting to take the course, and it made her feel confident that knowing that there were people that were going to be in the classroom she was in that had some exposure to a crisis situation and that they might have an idea of what to do to manage that situation. Number 3, reduce the number of entry points onto school grounds, permanently staff entry points with security personnel or security technology. This is the one that is the easiest to implement and that for some reason causes the greatest uproar. You may have seen, I think it was a Young Turks video that talked about this. We're not allowed to increase technological security in classrooms because it makes the students feel like prisoners. But it would protect students from the dangers of people bringing weapons onto campus. None of these solutions are going to be implemented, I know that, because the left is too set against people being able to defend themselves. And it's not that they don't want people to be able to defend themselves. It's that they want to be able to get rid of the gun. And to say, let's make the schools easier to defend, is to say we can't get rid of the gun, and they're not willing to do that. Finally, and this is something that I think everybody could get on board with, at least the normal people in America, we should allow individual school districts to implement whatever security measures they deem necessary at their own discretion. The government should, I think, make some security measures available, but not mandate that those measures be put in place. I would like to see the government say, all right, the gun-free zone thing, we're going to change that. Right now, only quote-unquote authorized personnel are allowed to carry firearms on school property. I would like to see the government say, we're going to expand the definition of authorized personnel to include regular staff and faculty of the school who have undergone training regimens A, B, and C, and who've been evaluated according to criteria A and B. I think that would be fantastic, a fantastic security solution. I think that the government should say, we are going to allow schools to implement measures A, B, and C to reduce the number of entry points into school property, and we're going to give them access to security measures A and B such that the entry points can be monitored in these ways. I think that I would like to see the government say, we are going to provide funding so that schools can hire X additional security staff to monitor their property. And then, at the end of saying, we're going to make all of this available to all the schools that receive federal funding, finally, you get to pick and choose which of these security measures you want to implement at your schools. And I think that this is critical because different schools are going to require different levels of security. Some schools, for some schools, it's not feasible to reduce the number of entry points. I'll give you an illustration. My high school is the high school and the elementary school and the middle school, and it kind of sprawls. There is some private property very near to the schools, and there are bus routes that have to travel through the private property to touch all of the school grounds. So it would be kind of unfeasible for the school to erect barriers and reduce the number of entry points to the school grounds. I think that the school that I went to would be better served by having 2, maybe 4 security personnel that were just roaming the school grounds, kind of doing passes around the school, watching for people that were moving in and out, that kind of thing. I think my school would be best served by having faculty and staff become trained and become certified to carry firearms on school property because of how it kind of sprawls out there. And so my school might look at the available security options and say, well, we can't do this one. We can't really reduce the number of entry points onto school ground, and we don't have the money to hire a bunch more security personnel. But what we can do is we can enable our teachers and staff to become trained so that they can carry firearms on school property. Maybe even, here's a new one, maybe teachers could allow parent volunteers, or not teachers, but schools could allow parent volunteers to come and be vetted by the school and volunteer their time to provide security services for the school. That way the school wouldn't have to hire professionals to do the job, but parents that were trustworthy. And of course, students and other parents and the teachers are going to know who the good parents are. And they could say, yeah, we know that that's a good parent. They're the parent of this kid, and this kid is a perfect angel in school. The kid has nothing bad to say about their parents ever. So that parent is probably a good parent. They could come and volunteer as a security personnel at this school. Let me know what you guys think about the real or imaginary solutions that have been proposed for the school shooting problem. Let me know what you think about the incident. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like, subscribe, hit the bell for notifications. Make sure you keep your eyes open. The bonus video will be coming shortly after this one goes live. This is going to go up around 6. The bonus video should be up just a few minutes after that. So that's all that there is for today. I hope that you enjoy it. I hope you'll come back on Monday. I'll be out of the office, but I will be uploading a video. You won't want to miss it. Until then, have a fantastic weekend. Good night, and God bless.